So I'd like to call our special council meeting of Monday, March 16th, 2020 to order. And I'd like to welcome those who are watching live stream this evening. We've completed our committee of the whole meeting, but I would, as the two meetings, apart from being live streamed this evening, they will be video recorded and will be posted on our Town of Sydney website as usual. Within 24 to 48 hours, and they will be separate videos, the committee of the whole meeting and the special council meeting that we're having now. So I'd also like to, for this meeting, acknowledge, give a territorial acknowledgement. We acknowledge we're meeting in the traditional territory of the Wasanich people. We have an agenda before us, and we also had two late items brought before us. So items, if we could have a motion to approve an amended agenda with items 2A1 and 2A2.
Move approval as amended.
Second.
Discussion, all in favor? The motion carries. Thank you. So now I'd like to move to item 2A1, which is a Town of Sydney response planning to COVID-19 report, and I invite a verbal report from Fire Chief Brett Mickelson, who has also had the role of Emergency Operations Center Director for the past several days. Welcome, Chief.
Might be better, you never know. All right, Mayor and Council, this evening I'll review the actions that have been taken by the Town of Sydney Emergency Management Program in response to the COVID-19 outbreak. As of this afternoon, there were 324 confirmed cases in Canada, 73 in British Columbia, and to date there have been 4 COVID-19 related fatalities in Canada. What is the COVID-19 or novel coronavirus? The coronavirus is a family of viruses that causes a range of illnesses from the common cold to SARS and MERS, or SARS is severe acute respiratory syndrome, or MERS or Middle East respiratory syndrome. COVID-19 is a novel or new coronavirus that has not been previously identified in humans. Common signs of infection are fever, cough, shortness of breath, and in severe cases, this viral infection can cause pneumonia, kidney failure, and death. Coronaviruses cause infections of the nose, throat, and lungs, and are spread person to person through droplet contact, which is coughing and sneezing, close personal contact, which is shaking hands, and indirect contact, which is touching an object with the virus on it and then touching your mouth, nose, or eyes prior to washing your hands. There is a wealth of prevention and risk information on the town website with links to VHA, Government of Canada, and the Province of British Columbia Centre for Disease Control sites. I encourage all town staff and residents to utilize these resources for verified factual information pertaining to the COVID outbreak and the response initiatives taken. In short, wash your hands and practice social distancing. The federal and provincial government provide updates daily and provide guidance on, which we provide on our town website. I'd like to outline just a couple of the key updates that were released today. The first is from the provincial government, and the first is that they are restricting visitors in long-term care to essential visits only. They've created a new dedicated phone service for non-medical information pertaining to COVID-19, and that's 1-888 COVID-19. And it remains the same, that if you're symptomatic with COVID symptoms or other health issues, that you just dial 811. There's a new order prohibiting all public gatherings of more than 50 people. This includes indoor and outdoor sporting events, conferences, meetings, religious gatherings, and other similar events. The federal government today, as you're probably aware, advise that all Canadians avoid non-essential travel outside the country until further notice, and I've urged all Canadians abroad to return via commercial means while they remain available. All travelers returning to Canada are to self-isolate for 14 days upon entry. There are exceptions for workers in the airline industry and movement of goods and people. And to protect Canadians and to ease burdens on the healthcare system, frontline workers, the Government of Canada, they'll specifically bar foreign nationals for entering our country. So essentially they're shutting the border with exceptions of some US citizens for now. So, since the outbreak of this initial coronavirus, town staff have been diligently monitoring its spread and established trigger points to initiate an EOC activation. Decision to activate our EOC was made late in the day on March 11th. Our activation was intended to promote internal coordination and business continuity in response to COVID-19. The EOC Director, Planning Section Chief, and Information Officer positions were staffed or are being staffed in support from our CAO and administration staff. The town's emergency response plan already contained a pandemic response plan, and this was targeted at influenza-like illnesses such as H1N1 in 2009 and 2010, but it serves as an excellent basis as a hazard-specific response plan that we followed to date. Council have been receiving our daily EOC situation reports and are aware of the many tasks we've undertaken. Some of these primarily include supporting internal and external business continuity, so that's for the town as well as all the businesses in town. Liaising with VHA and our extended care facilities, which represent our most at-risk population, and relaying verified information to town residents via our website. I'm going to highlight some of the key initiatives we've been working on in the last days. First off, we've reviewed our isolation procedures and response protocols with our fire department staff. We respond to first responder medical calls. Our response has been altered significantly. Now we focus on patient and bystander interrogation from a distance prior to making contact, and only if the patient requires immediate life-saving interventions will we commit to this patient contact. We've had 3 of these events to date. We have reviewed this with both the BC Ambulance Service and the Directors of Care at our various nursing homes, and both were supportive of an understanding of this pretty dramatic policy shift. We convened a meeting of our extended care and nursing working group, which consists of each facility's Director of Care, and identified each facility's individual response procedures, and we discussed and reviewed them in detail. VHA was contacted and requested to provide clear guidance for these facilities at this time. Each facility is mandating social distancing and restricting visitor access. We have contacted both North and Central Saanich to ascertain their level of response and actions being taken. We convened a meeting with the SBIA and Chamber to discuss business continuity plans and steps forward to lessen the inevitable negative impact on the town's business sector. We've been updating the town's website and social media feeds daily with verified and factual information. We've met with the RCMP Staff Sergeant to review the RCMP's business continuity planning process and their response activities. Created a list of locations with occupancy of over 250 persons. We visited each location, met with the property reference, and reviewed the requirement not to host gatherings in excess of 250 persons. This was prior to today's limit of 50. And to promote social distancing. This was actually very well received and appreciated by the individual pastors or directors of these facilities. They thought it was an excellent outreach. And as well, the library, the Shaw Ocean Discovery Center, and Mary Winspear Center, and the Sydney Museum have all closed in an effort to limit the spread of COVID-19. I reached out to my colleague at the North Shore Emergency Management Office, and we had an excellent discussion in respect to the actions that they've taken. Have they been essentially ground zero to the response of the outbreak in British Columbia and the resulted fatalities in Lynn Valley? And lastly, as part of our internal and external business continuity efforts, we continue to work on coordinating and communicating various event cancellations in town, which is obviously quite dynamic. To get to this point, I would like to thank all the staff that have worked long hours and weekends to advance our preparedness and response activities to get us to this point. As this pandemic event continues to evolve, proactively escalating our response to an EOC level 2 is strongly recommended. We put plans in place to start this tomorrow morning, and we'll see EOC staffing expand from 3 dedicated staff to 9+. This will permit advanced planning to occur, so in the event our mitigation strategies are not successful, response plans to these anticipated events can be immediately implemented. We are also staffing a recovery planning section chief position and encouraging the SBIA and Chamber to actively participate in this recovery planning process. I would like to really stress it's important, and definitely for the public watching, that this event, this is a very kind of stressful, this is a stressful event, and it's unprecedented, and it's not business as usual. We are, as a municipality, are focusing all of our efforts on the maintenance of critical services. Completion dates for town initiatives, from major infrastructure projects to the OCP review, those dates will be affected. At this time, the emergency EMBC does not recognize this pandemic outbreak as a disaster or emergency eligible for compensation to the municipality under the Disaster Financial Assistance Regulation. But since we've started our initiated RAC, we've tracked all of our costs, and in the event that this policy decision is revised, which it likely will be. I can state that the town's emergency management budget is modest. It's intended to fund online and face-to-face based training, and costs arising from this activation over multiple operation periods will have to be funded from other sources. Before taking questions, I'd like to address the psychosocial impact of this event on not only on our staff, but on our residents. There's anxiety resulting from this event that will affect everyone in a multitude of ways. This is normal, it's to be expected. I would like everyone in the town to identify a person who lives alone or whose ability to visit others is restricted or limited by age or risk factor, and give them a call and check in on them. We must adhere to social distancing, but not social isolation. I've encouraged all my staff to do this, and also make time for exercise and self-care, and don't watch CNN 24 hours a day and become fixated on the latest COVID count. That's not healthy. Lastly, it's important to focus on future fun and pick a trip or a future event that yourself and your family can look forward to. These are things I go over with my staff after bad calls. It's tactics we use to combat cumulative stress and kind of ward off PTSD, and I really believe it'd be good medicine for all of us now. So I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Chief Mickelson, for your detailed report this evening. Just before going to questions from council, just a couple of brief remarks. I want to thank Chief Brett Mickelson and CAO Randy Humble and the staff team for, firstly, the excellent work that's been done over several years in emergency preparedness planning that has helped facilitate the town acting promptly and thoroughly in this particular health emergency. The chief referred to the pandemic planning that has been previously done and is helpful today. And thank you, secondly, for the work you're doing today through our Emergency Operations Center, and also prioritizing the essential services to our residents, our businesses, and community partners. Do council members have questions? Councillor Fowler.
Thank you. I would like to echo the mayor's thanks to everybody, and also include the mayor in that thank you, because I know that he's been involved in making sure that things happen and run smoothly as best as possible, and I do thank everybody on staff who's been part of that. A quick question. You talked about EOS level 2 for tomorrow, and I shot the mayor an email about it earlier, and I'm just curious, because some other municipalities have gone to it already last week. What differentiates the time? I realize that there's prep work that has to be done to go to level 2, but I'm just curious why we're going tomorrow as opposed to somebody else who's gone previous to that.
Sure. So our specific pandemic response plan laid out that in the event that there was an event like this, that we would go to an EOC level 1, which in the context of Sydney requires an EOC director, an information officer, and a planning section chief, and those are 3 positions that are staffed to basically to kind of lay the groundwork if the event escalates. As it transitioned into kind of a larger pandemic that actually started to affect Sydney, it was in our plans to ratchet it up to an EOC level 2. So some of this is based in our based on our existing plans, and all of this goes back to Sydney's hazard, risk, and vulnerability analysis. So why we're not doing something, why we may be ahead of municipalities that are, you know, around us geographically is we have very unique demographics, and we definitely want to get ahead of our most at-risk population. So I think what we're doing is sound, and it's the timing is appropriate.
Okay. Just for clarification,
Yeah.
I appreciate that understanding. Thank you.
Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. And I just want to say that, you know, I've noticed level anxiety out there in the community. However, when I talk to people about what I know about what's going on, that, you know, EOC at level 1 has been set up, that our staff are communicating with the care homes, and that things are going on, that's, you know, what I get from people is okay. So, so they feel some level, their anxiety subsides somewhat once they know that, you know, people like you and staff have got things under control, and so that there's some level of comfort there. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
A couple questions. You were talking earlier about the care centers, and you had talked to directors there, and you talked about guidance from Island Health. What I wasn't sure of was, has Island Health actually issued some direction for the care centers, or is it, you know, are local people and care centers just getting together on their own to put plans in place?
Through the mayor to Councillor O'Keefe, it is all driven, this whole event at this time is specifically driven by health and the various health authorities. So initially we were a little bit concerned. We convened a meeting of our nursing and extended health groups, and obviously each facility is a bit different. So to clearly answer your question, there was no specific direction the date that we met with them. There were no special precautions in place. Bear in mind, this is 3 or 4 days ago, which is a huge amount of time in this event. Obviously things have escalated such. We are not privy to all the information that they are getting directly from VHA, but what we are doing, and is because we have created this working group, and this communication is a lot of good information sharing going on in respect to some of them can only really provide meals in the large gathering spaces, which is not obviously ideal for social distancing. So they're creating different meal times, they're separating things. Some of them are actually providing meals on paper plates, and their simplified meal plans to their actual rooms. So each facility and their capabilities or capacity is different, but I can say that they're all following social distancing, limiting obviously staff that have come into the country. They've identified that obviously proactively early, and their cleaning regimes and all these things are increased up dramatically, as well as limiting or restricting visitor access. So again, just kind of getting on that early, getting them all in the same room to review that, it was actually good because they could kind of bounce a lot of ideas off each other, even sharing staff and building resiliency within the group. So I think it was quite positive.
Related to that, I was wondering about daycare centers, if you know if Island Health has come forward with any recommendations about...
I'm not aware of any specific recommendations. I would assume it would follow the same guidance as the schools, and I would anticipate, but I don't know for a fact, that they would likely be closed. But I honestly don't. I can't speak to that as for certain.
Okay, and one more. It really is just one more, Chad.
Just on that one point, Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thank you. I'm the president of the Sydney Cooperative Preschool, so I've received the guidance that the schools and daycares will have gotten. On March 13th, we were given our latest guidance. On February, I want to say 23rd, we were given the original guidance from VHA, which is basically to step up our cleaning. We already follow at this time of year flu cleaning. It's very germy, children are germy. And when I speak to long-term care homes, they say the same thing. And originally they were saying that was what they were doing as well, was simply, we're following what we do during flu season, only a little bit more. So in a child care center or in our preschool, we would have to clean any toys that touched a child's mouth, or if the children were particularly or seemed ill and they'd been touching toys, we would have to sanitize them at the end of the day. But now we've had to step that up to, we also sanitize door handles inside and out, walls that are high touch surfaces, bathroom doors and things like that. Our preschool shares space with a church, and so we are voluntarily looking at additional spaces just because of the cross-contamination between the two populations. Obviously they're older, so each school, the schools are getting specific guidance when they go out, and We have not been told to shut yet, but we did all see Bonnie Henry's statement earlier, that they would be giving us additional guidance tomorrow, so.
Your last question, Councillor O'Keefe?
Yes, and it is my last question, I think. What I was wondering about was other multifamily buildings and also places like Summergate where it's not a care facility, but there's a high concentration of seniors there. And so does the EOC have any role in informing or guiding those places as well?
Well, definitely, as we expand and build our capacity, we'll, proactively identify those that are not, nursing homes or extended care facilities, but larger apartment complexes that are primarily house a number of people over 65 in Sydney, and that will allow us kind of the firepower to do that. Again, in particular Summergate, these are individual, single-family dwellings, and I'd be more concerned in respect to messaging to limit the interaction in the clubhouse, and that would be our primarily messaging at this time. In many ways, they're ideally set in that context, that they're individual single-family dwellings that they can kind of stay away from each other, so that's an advantage.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Garnett, then Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Fire Chief Mickelson, for the update. Thanks to you and all the frontline care workers that are in the mix of it and having to deal with a lot more stress than I think the average resident even can capacitate, and they're stressed as it is, but you guys are on a whole other level, so thank you for all the work you do to keep our community safe and healthy. If you wouldn't mind explaining to people who are tuning in to watch this what level 1, level 2 differences might be.
Sure. So through the mayor to the councillor Gardner, a level 1 EOC in our context for this specific event is largely putting three functional roles in place, largely as kind of a formalized advanced planning, which allows us to identify the event, gather information, and then we can progressively kind of build out the organization if the situation warrants. We've been doing that, and as this situation, as we've all been aware, every 2 or 3 hours there's another press release from another government which kind of follows suit, which just continues to escalate the amount of preparedness and things that are going on. So it's been dynamic, to say the least. So now as we expand to a level 2, that's nine functional positions. So it's the it's the EOC director and the 3 people that report directly to him or her, which are liaison information and risk. So those are all 3 positions. Then it's operations, planning, finance, and logistics all follow our separate headings under that, and staff positions that we'll fill. Under logistics, we'll have IT folks and a number of people in the community safety building standing up the EOC in the large room that was specifically built for. So I didn't intend to put it to test this soon, but nevertheless, I think we're lucky we have it.
Mr. Hummel?
If I can, yeah, just speaking to level 1, level 2. So I believe the first jurisdiction to go to level 2 was Saanich, District of Saanich, and they're now contemplating a level 3 EOC. And the CRD is at a level 2, I understand. I'm not sure. I believe Oak Bay is either at level 2 or contemplating level 2. And correct me if I'm wrong, I guess it would be us at level 2 tomorrow, Chief Mickelson. And then are
Correct.
there any other municipalities in the region that are considering level 2?
In the CRD, I believe it's primarily been Saanich and the CRD. Correct. And then I know, again, Oak Bay is contemplating will probably be the 3rd. But again, I would anticipate these things happen so fast that, by this time tomorrow, we could have half a dozen. So. Yeah.
And tomorrow I'll be participating in a REMP meeting, a Regional Emergency Management Plan meeting through that's being conducted through the CRD. So this is the emergency coordinators for the various municipalities through a teleconference will be meeting and having a discussion on each of the respective municipalities' initiatives and actions around the EOC level. So it's a good way to get a firm understanding regarding what each municipality is doing within the region.
Thanks, Mr. Humble. Oh, were you finished, Councillor Duncan?
Thank you. Mr. Humble has anticipated what my question was going to be. I guess I'll first back up and just echo my colleague's sentiment. I like that you have your little slogan of social distancing, not social isolation. It goes really nicely with, I don't remember if it's BC's or Canada's panic or preparation, not panic. Because I think that's something, as Councillor O'Keefe mentioned in speaking to the public, obviously our town staff, and as I've come to sit on council and over the past year have learned, our town staff and our emergency services, and obviously the care homes and the medical VHA and other organizations, they have pandemic plans in place already. And while this specific virus and the rapidity of the geographical spread, I think, is what is really novel, but the idea of a pandemic coming up has been planned for, and we are not coming up with new plans so much as implementing ones that are in place or are adapting them to this situation. And I think that's important for people to know. They've prepared for this. And I like that you have mentioned the way you debrief with your emergency responders, because I think right now, as a lot of people are going into the panic phase, if they have never been through that before, they will not understand what happens when the adrenaline rush wears off and they are isolated and the depression can set in. So the recovery plans and the response plans and the ongoing communication you've had with the business community and kind of helping the business community get in touch with their people and manage that, I think, has been a really nice, psychological medical response. I'm really appreciative of that. But I guess the next step is, we've talked about EOC level 1 and level 2. Can you, for the purpose of the viewers, discuss the number of levels? I believe there's only 3. And at what trigger does that come in? Is it when local cases arrive, or additional funding is required for additional measures? What begins to trigger these different, what would trigger a level going up? And what would that entail?
So, through the mayor to Councillor Duncan, it's an excellent question. So really at level 2, we've established the key functions, and again, there's the operations function, planning and logistics, and then as the event expands, or our requirement or our staffing requirements to respond or proactively plan for that event, there's a number of positions underneath. So example, in planning, there might be 3 or 4 different individuals under that planning section chief, and then we'd create branches under that to work depending on the complexity of the event. So the people actually working in the number of functional areas are not going to increase, but the number of staff working under each planning or under each section chief can expand considerably. So that's really how the expansion would occur.
Mr. Humble.
Yeah, it is a great question, and I know the chief and I have talked about at what stage do we look at the level 3, and part of it is going to be a sort of a resource capacity function as well. As the chief's indicated, we have up to 10 staff that will be dedicated EOC starting tomorrow morning, leaving remaining staff here at the town hall, and our outside staff with respect to covering our operations and essential services, and trying to again maintain a semblance of I guess business continuity with respect to town hall operations. One thing that is important to note is when we move to the level 2 EOC, the staff that we will have at the EOC, and we've already provided an indication of what staff will be going over. Those will be dedicated staff to the EOC. They'll be working out of the EOC, and they won't be bouncing back here to the municipal hall. we want to maintain that degree of separation, quite frankly, and there's a number of reasons why we want to do that. We want to eliminate the potential for transmitting the virus, for example. If we were to transmit the virus within, for example, the EOC or within town hall operations, that has severe implications on our capacity to be able to maintain either the EOC, quite frankly, or town hall operations. So we're going to be pretty diligent when it comes to how we're focusing on the EOC and how we're focusing on maintaining town hall operations. And thus the measure today that was taken with respect to limiting public access, or prohibiting public access, or restricting public access to the town hall facilities. So.
Thank you, Mr. Humble. Were there further questions of Chief Mickelson? Again, thank you, Chief. And good luck. Now I'd like to move to item 2A2, which are recommendations regarding our meetings of council and committees.
I'll move that regular council meetings continue as scheduled and that meetings of all town committees be cancelled until further notice.
Discussion? Councillor O'Keefe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Getting back to our earlier discussion about developments, being held up, and if APC isn't meeting, I guess I'm just wondering, do we anticipate that we would want APC's input on anything? And if so, would they still be able to meet through, as we're going to propose later, next week, I think, electronically or by conference call or something like that?
One of the things that's been in discussion and has been presented this evening is with the establishment of the EOC and the allocation of resources to the EOC and the staff, is there will be limitations in some of our town services. And one of the reasons for the planning work that is going now is to plan forward in terms of business continuity with our essential services and with other services deemed non-essential. So perhaps Mr. Humble would like to expand on it further, but at this point we think this is the best advice to move forward, is to cancel meetings until further notice. It's a postponement. If circumstances change, this is a rapidly evolving health emergency. We don't know exactly where we're going to be, later this week, next week, and beyond. So we can certainly come back if we think, through further planning of town staff and recommendations that we want to consult with APC in some fashion or otherwise. I think we can come back to that, but I think this is prudent at this time.
Okay. Yep. Thanks.
Yeah, I think the mayor's summed it up very nicely. It's an extremely fluid situation. This is sort of our best guess right now in terms of what we know about our resources and our capacity, and certainly we want to look at having staff that are available at the town hall, to planning staff to potentially focus on existing development applications that we have and the processing of those applications to try to keep some things moving. We're still trying to figure out how we're going to potentially provide building permits and provide those kinds of things that may require a level of face-to-face interaction. Like, as I said, we're still working through some of those details, and it may take some time to put those in place. But I think this is the best course of action, given what we know right now and given what we know about our resources.
And following that question, Councillor O'Keefe, as the chief might have mentioned, I mean, we have set up over the last week an excellent resource on our Town of Sydney homepage. There's a direct link from the homepage, and there will be information. Information has been posted there on a daily basis for a number of days. And with regards to our services, there will be more information, and there is certainly also their contact information for members of the public or community who want or need more information on the continuation of service. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? The motion carries. Thank you. now move to 3A, which is bylaw number 2188, council and committee procedure, and we have amendment number 3 to permit meetings to be conducted electronically.
I'll move the bylaw be considered for first reading.
Second.
All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you.
I'll move second reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you.
I'll move third reading.
Second.
All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. I'll move to item 4 with regards to acting mayor. We have a recommendation.
I'll move the recommendation that Councillor P. Wainwright be appointed acting mayor effective March 16th to June 30th, 2020.
I'll second.
Discussion? Councillor Garnett? Oh, Councillor O'Keefe.
Oh, okay, I just want to clarify, so we have a schedule of acting mayors on a monthly basis, so I'm just wondering, so are we setting that aside for the next few months, or? Oh, okay,
That's correct.
okay.
It's,
So I
it's,
wasn't sure if there was gonna be, like, Councillor Wainwright was gonna be sort of like a deputy mayor, and that the schedule that we already have in place, those people would still chair the committee of the whole, so just some clarity on that.
we haven't created a deputy mayor role yet, but
Okay.
it's a good question, and so it felt that as the public may be aware, that each year in December we go ahead and pass a resolution identifying which of the members of council will take 2 months each of the year, not in succession, to be acting mayor, which has a number of duties. One is chairing a committee of the whole, but there are others, including a role with the mayor in the EOC communications. So it was felt in this particular situation that it would be helpful to have continuity and Councillor Wainwright's experience in this role for the period of next 3 months. And then we would revert back to the schedule that we've already set in place through December of this year.
Okay.
Councillor Gunnar.
Yeah, further to that, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is obviously a what-if scenario, so if you can't, for whatever reason, I guess my only concern is if something was to happen to Peter or Councillor Wainwright, is there a process in place to have somebody to replace him? Or do we have to meet together to form another acting mayor at that point in time?
I'll take that question through to staff, and my understanding is if the acting mayor is not available at the time needed, you actually go to the next person on the list. So we would then revert to the current the list that's there.
That's correct.
Or if we had an option, if there was time permitting, we might choose to appoint another member.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
Yep.
question. Councillor Wainwright.
Is there anything that would prevent us at a committee of the whole meeting, say in April, of deciding kind of ad hoc to appoint whoever would normally have been chairing the meeting to chair it? Because I think the key duties that we're looking for the continuity on are with respect to the EOC, not chairing the committee of the whole.
Certainly, I think that's available. I'll go put the question to the staff, though. We might be.
There isn't a committee of the whole and currently, but it's certainly something we can look into and see. I quite frankly don't see an issue with it off the top of my head, but yeah, we can look into it.
Okay. No, fair question. Good question, and thank you. Thank you for that one. I think we can certainly consider it at the time. Councillor Fallot.
So while we just are talking about this, what determines whether a community has a deputy mayor?
I will put that question to the staff.
Yeah, it's a good question. We can look into it as well. I imagine it depends on your own procedures in terms of whether or not you have a rotating schedule with respect to acting mayor, or you go to a permanent deputy mayor system. But
Just,
Yeah.
just a casual observation of other municipal jurisdictions in the province when we get together at conferences, that sort of thing. You know, a deputy mayor's is, I think, a more formalized acting mayor role.
Yeah.
Perhaps, you know, is more engaged in that role, and hence just having it as acting, they move to deputy. But basically, you know, at any time the mayor is unavailable,
Yeah.
or the mayor requests, the acting mayor carries out that function.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? The motion carries. Thank you. Well, thank you, councillor colleagues, and thank you again to staff. We'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you again.